You can use hatch command from draw panel of home tab. So here is the hatch tool. Click on this hatch button. You'll see that a temporary hatch creation ribbon will be created. Now using this ribbon will create hatch patterns inside the closed geometries. First you need to ensure that pick point is selected. Right now a pick point is selected because my cursor is point selection cursor. If it is not point selection cursor, then click on this pick points button and your cursor will look like these two perpendicular lines. Now move your cursor to an area where you want to create your hatch. So right now let's say that I want to create hatch in this area. So when you move your cursor to this area, you'll see a preview of the hatch. You may or may not need this kind of hatch, but let's just click it. So when you click here, you'll see that this hatch pattern automatically detects the island and it will fill complete island excluding this extra geometry. Let's go to this pattern panel. Right now angle pattern is selected. Let's change it to ANSI 3.1 and the pattern is now changed to ANSI 3.1. It's extremely closed. In order to change this closed spacing of these lines, you need to go to scale. So go to properties panel and here you will find this hatch pattern scale. Change this scale value to 5 and press tab. You'll see that now hatch patterns are further apart. You can increase this scale value to make it more widely spaced. Now let's move back to patterns. When you click on this small arrow icon, this pattern panel will expand and now you can see a whole lot of patterns which are in AutoCAD. So you can use any kind of pattern for your drawing. Let's keep our selection to ANSI 3.1 for now. Now move on to this pattern panel. Here you'll see three options: pattern, gradient and solid. We'll look into gradient in a moment. If you change it to solid, you'll be able to fill a solid color in the area. So right now you can see that this complete island has been filled with a single color. In order to change the color of this pattern, click on this by layer drop down and now here you'll see all the colors. So this is the hatch color drop down menu. From here you can pick your colors. If you're not satisfied with these many colors, you can go to more colors and select from index color, true color or color books. Let's keep our selection to this drop down only and now here I have selected a color for this solid hatch pattern. You'll also observe that when you select solid from this drop down menu, solid will be selected in the pattern as well. So you may select it from here also instead of this drop down menu. Now let's go and close this hatch pattern. So click on this close hatch creation and your hatch will be completely created with a solid pattern. Now let's move on and create some more patterns on this drawing. So go to hatch again and now I'll create a hatch pattern in this island. So click in this island and now you'll see that the internal geometries are excluded as expected, and change this hatch pattern to NC31. And when you change it, you'll see that the color of hatch remains the original color which we have previously used. So in order to change the color, click on this drop down menu and change it to something else. Let's say green this time. You'll now see a different background color drop down as well. So when you go to this background color drop down, you can change the background color for your hatch pattern. So let's say I want to change this background color to yellow and here's the changed background color. So let's keep it at none if you don't want any background color. Now we have made the pattern on this island. Let's go and close hatch creation again. There is one more method of adding hatch to your drawing. So far we have used island detection method. Let's go and select the object method, in which we won't select pick points, rather we'll select the object. So select hatch and now instead of selecting pick points, click on this select boundary objects. Now you'll see that your cursor is converted to a pick box, and in this case you can select a polyline or a closed geometry to make your selection. For example, in this case, if I select this polyline, complete hatch pattern will be created inside and any boundary which is present inside this geometry will be ignored completely. Let's say that I want to create a hatch pattern angle with a scale of 1 unit in that area. So here is my pattern ignoring this boundary. If you'll create this hatch pattern inside this boundary, then also it will ignore all these internal geometries. So let's delete the hatch pattern which we have previously created and click on hatch, select object, and now select this rectangle, and you'll see that all the geometries which are present inside is completely ignored. Dimensioning is very crucial feature of AutoCAD drawing. For dimensioning, you can go to Annotation panel of Home tab, or you can go to Annotate tab and Dimensions panel. I'll select Dimensions panel. Select Linear from this panel, and now select the point from where you want to start your dimensioning. Right now I'm not able to select this point. For this you need to turn on OSnap. Also, you need to make sure that these points, endpoint, midpoint, center, and intersections are turned on. Let's select the first point and then the second point. Place your cursor at a certain distance from your original drawing and your dimension will be created. Right now this dimension is created with a length of 56 units. Let's select linear again, select this point and then this point, and again the next dimension will be created. If you want to create a aligned dimension, then you should select the second option, which is aligned. When I select aligned dimension, then it will create a dimension which is parallel to the object which we have selected. So in this case, here is the aligned dimension. But if you select linear for making aligned dimension, it will create either a horizontal or a vertical dimension depending upon the position where you place your dimension. So let's place it here. Let's move on to the next command, which is arc length. Here we have this arc. So when you click on this arc and expand it, it will create a dimension which is equal to length of this arc, and it is also indicated by this arc length symbol. Please make a note that this is arc length, not diameter or radius value. You can also select arc length and specify length of arc for this smaller arc. Let's move on to the next option, which is radius. For specifying radius, click on the arc, fillet or circle and drag your cursor. So here's the radius, which you can clearly see that it is 24 units and length of arc is 54.06 units. Select radius again, click on this circle and let's make it here. So here's the radius, which is 35 units. Let's click on this arrow and select diameter. Now this will create a diameter. Right now you can clearly see that the radius is 35 units. Click on the same circle again and you'll see the diameter is now indicated as 70 units along with phi symbol, which indicates the diameter of the drawing. Let's create continue and baseline dimensions. For continue dimensions, first create a dimension. Now this dimension will act as a standard for creating our dimension. Now click on this continue button. As soon as you click on this button, you'll see that your next dimension starts from the point where you left initially, and now click at the next point, which is right now the center of this circle. Now click at the next point and again next point. So in this way your dimension will keep on continuing from the initial point in a single chain. Let's now move on to baseline. So when you select baseline dimension, it will prompt you to specify the dimension as base dimension. Let's select this one. So now once we have selected this dimension, it will again start dimensioning from the last point of this dimension, but in this case it will create the dimension with a slight difference. Let's select the center point now, and then this point and this point. Now in this scenario, all the dimensions are measured from the initial point which we have selected. So this becomes the base point and all dimensions are measured accordingly. Dimension style decides the properties of a dimension like text style, arrow, color of dimension, text, leader line, and other properties related to dimension. Let's move on to Annotate tab and click on this dimension style drop down. You'll see that we currently have 3 dimension styles: annotative, ISO 2.5 and standard. Now in order to make our own custom dimension style, click on this manage dimension style. You can also select dim style from command line for this dimension style manager. So type dim style and press enter. So this will also bring dimension style manager window. In order to make a new dimension style, click on new and give it a name. Now click on continue. So this will take you to my standard dim style. Now we have multiple tabs here with which you can create your dimension style and make multiple changes in your dimension. So let's start with this lines tab. So this is dedicated to all the lines which are present in dimension line. So currently this panel will change all the properties related with dimension line. For example, color. So you can change color for your dimension line using this. You can also change line type. From this you can load your line type and change it to some other line type. There are some other options like line weight, but these settings will only apply to this dimension line, and the preview you can see here. Now for extension lines, which are these lines, you can modify options from this panel. So here also we have a drop down for color, extension type line 1, and for line 2 drawing line type. We also have a line weight option. Now when you suppress any extension line, that extension line will not be visible, but this you can also suppress from property panel, so you may ignore this part. Now here is extension beyond dim line, which is this small extension way beyond this dimension line. So when you select it as 0, you will observe that there is no extension beyond this dimension line, but let's restore it to 1.25. so here is the extension. Also here we have an option for offset from origin, which is this small gap which this maintains when it dimensions. So the dimension now starts at an offset distance of 0.625 from the point which we select. If you select 0, dimension will start right at the point which you click. So let's again keep it to 0.625, which is the default value. Let's move on to symbols and arrows. So here we have some arrows. So now we have close fill as the default arrow. Let's change it to some other arrow type. In this case I'm selecting this right angle arrow. Now the arrow type has been changed, and you'll also observe that the second arrow type is changed. But if you change the second arrow style, it will not change the first arrow style. So in order to change both, just select the first arrow style and both will be changed. Let's click and change it to right angle arrow style. For leader line you can change arrow styles from here, but since we don't have any leader line in this preview panel, we won't be able to show it now. Here is the arrow size, which can be modified from here. So right now the arrow size is set to 2.5. You can change this arrow size from here. When you move on to this text tab, you'll also see that we have a text height which is generally equal to the size of our arrow. So here also you can change the size of text. For example, let's change it to 5 units and press tab. Now the size of this text changes to double its original size. Let's keep it at 2.5. In this text tab we have all the settings related to text, like text style. Let's change this text style. So right now we have a standard and annotative. We have not yet seen annotative, so I'll leave it for now, but we'll look at annotative property later on. If you want to change font style of your text, click on this small box. It will take you to text style window, and from here you can change your font style. So let's change it to Comic Sans, and here it is. So now this looks so unique. Click on apply and close it. So Comic Sans style is now applied to this. If you want to change text color, you can select this box and change it. So let's change it to red. In order to fill the background color of your text, you can select any other color. So right now a background color is applied. If you want to draw a frame around that background, then click on this draw frame and a frame will be drawn, but I'll keep it at none, and I'll also uncheck this draw frame. So here we have this dimension. Now the placement of text will be decided by this panel. Currently we have text above dimension line. If you select it is centered, all the dimension text will be centered, and similarly other options will behave. So let's keep it at above. Right now you'll also observe that the dimension text is aligned along with the dimension line. So here it is vertical, horizontal and now aligned with the dimension line. But when you click on horizontal alignment, all the dimensions will be horizontal irrespective of the orientation of dimension line. So let's keep it at horizontal. Now move on to fit tab. On this fit tab we don't have much to look at, but if you want to change the complete dimension style to annotative, you can check this annotative box and the complete dimension style will change to annotative. Here is an overall scale which we can change. So right now whatever the size of dimension is, if you change it to something else, let's say 10, then the complete dimension will increase to 10 times of its original values, and this includes the size of arrow, text and other objects. For now I'll keep it at 2.5 and we will look at this option in a moment. Now let's move on to primary units, and here we have a very important setting to make. In this primary unit we have decimal as our precision format. Now if you change it to architectural, you'll see feet and inches type of format, and also we have some other fractional and engineering unit. So you can select your format of dimensioning from this drop down. So let's keep it at decimal now. So here we have a precision. So right now precision of 2 decimal points is selected, so the dimension will be reported accurate up to the 2 decimal points. So let's click on 3, and now after decimal point you'll see 3 places of this dimension. For a decimal separator, a period is selected. You can also select comma and space for this decimal separator. So now we have made enough changes to this drawing. Now let's click on OK and let's see how our dimension style looks. Now click on set current and close. Now you can clearly see that in this drop down menu we have my standard dimension style selected as the current dimension. Now let's move on to this linear dimension and try to make a dimension here. So when I make a dimension, this will inherit properties which we have defined right now. Now let's move on to linear again and define the properties here. So here we have this dimension style. Now let's move on to this dim style again and click on modify and go to fit tab. So if you find that your dimension is too large or too small, then you can select this fit tab and change this overall scale to something else. Let's change it to 5, and now the text and arrow and all the dimension parameters will be changed to twice its original value. Let's close it and you'll see the difference. So right now all the parameters are now doubled of its original value. If you want to move back to any other dimension style, then click on this drop down menu again and change it to any other dimension style. Let's say ISO 25, and now when you make a new dimension, it will create your dimension according to ISO 25 standard, and the standard which we have created will no longer be used.